Odds are very good you have never seen a bike like this. This is the NAXEON IAM, and I'm gonna tell you everything I know about it so far. What are these lights for? What's this button for? What's that button for? What are all these buttons for? Oh, and yes, this is a touch screen with a whole bunch of options. There's just so much going on here. If you have questions you think of during this video, please feel free to ask them in the comments section. I will answer them in the next video. But I think I should start with, how do you turn this thing on? And if you look around where a key might go, there isn't one, and there's no obvious power button either. They really are trying to make this thing like a Tesla. So first off, this is your key. You tap it right here, and that wakes the bike up. Of course, back off, just tap it in the same spot. Option number 2 is that they have an app for your phone. Now this is where the bike really gets into what I would say Tesla territory, because you have your battery percentage, estimated range. Right here where it says appointment charging, you can actually set a time. So you could have this thing charging, when the power is the cheapest. It will show you its location. But if we just want to turn the bike on, we can tap the unlock button right there. Now, if I don't want to pull the phone out of my pocket, you can actually turn on what they call a Bluetooth key. And in that case, you literally just get within the vicinity of the bike and it will automatically turn on as you approach. Now there's a lot of other things you can get to on this app. We can click the vehicle information. I can see what my tire pressure is just from the app. If I click on the ride button, I can see how long the bike's been activated for, how many miles it's been ridden. It's in kilometers right now. I gotta figure out how to change that in the app. I've changed it on the screen of the bike to miles. I can check video recordings. We'll get into that a little bit later. My riding history, I can see what days I've ridden it, how much power have I used, my average speed, how much electricity I have actually saved if I wanna put figures in there. There's a lot of information in here. But let's jump over to the screen that's actually on the bike. So here's your view if you are actually sitting on the bike and you've just turned it on. This P is for park, sail. This is like the riding mode. Like instead of sport or eco, they have 3 different settings which are called sail, dynamic, and zigzag. I can actually change those with this button right here while riding, or I can tap right here on the screen while I'm stopped and select which one I'd like to use. I normally use zigzag, that is the highest performance mode. Here you can see the battery is at 81% and it's showing I have an estimated range right now of 88 miles. Usually when I have this thing charged up to 100%, it's somewhere around 110 miles or so. Will this button work if I'm sitting on it? Let's try it. I don't think that will. Oh, yes it will actually. There's a button right there. So that pops open the charge port cover. This is a standard J1772 charge port. That means that not only can you plug this thing into a 110 outlet with the cord they provide, but you can pull up to basically any public level 2 charging station and charge the bike. You don't have to carry anything with you. It's just the right plug built in from the factory. And then to close, you can see I've already got 171 miles on the bike. It, yes, did have 0 on it when I got it, so I have been putting it through its paces and feeling it out. Over here, we have instantaneous power. We have the average energy consumption. I'll have to see if I can change that to miles. This is showing 59.6 watt hours per kilometer. Maybe I'll do the math and see how many watt hours is that per mile. And then we have motor temperature and battery temperature. You can have these set as actual temperatures if you want to look at those, or you can just basically have it set to a quote unquote normal high. So at a glance, you can just tell, is that happy? I've been leaving them here and truthfully, I've been pushing it hard and they've always been in the normal range for me. And you know what? Something I've been waiting for literally 171 miles to do just so I could do it on camera. There we go. So the home screen here has a lot of things on it. It has a date, it has a time. There's a little tiny symbol right here showing that my kickstand is down. If I put my kickstand up, you can see that went away. If we go to the next screen, we can either tap these little icons on the bottom here, or we can just swipe. Navigation is all set up right here. You can put in a destination. You don't have to have your phone mounted up on the handlebars. Charging, I don't have to look for a charging station. I just click the charging button. It tells me there's a charge point on, looks like 210 North Auburn Street in Grass Valley. Oh, maybe we push this button. There we go. It can plan the route for me, and I could just do start navigation. It's like a mixture of operating a new cell phone and a bike all at the same time. So next screen is more like writing statistics. We have speed, mileage, state of charge, range. Here it also shows the tire pressures in real time, which is awesome. So I've ridden this bike on a hot day and I've seen these pressures go up as I'm pushing the bike harder. You can see instantaneous power right here, so we can see how much power we're using at any given second. Average energy consumption. I'm gonna guess mine's a bit high because I've been riding it hard. Of course, the motor temperature, battery temperature right there. The next screen is more statistics for us. Current driving, after charging, trip A, trip B. The next screen is cameras. This is a live feed right here. That's actually happening in real time. The bike has not only a front camera right there, but it has a rear facing camera back here as well. And you can set these to auto record. So as soon as you start riding, they just start recording everything that's happening. Right up here, this is actually a record button. You can push that while you're riding, so you can have it manually set up. So there's different ways you can program things like that. Now let's get into the actual settings, because there are a lot. Just for the fun of it, let's play one of these. So this looks like the rear camera. As I was coming up to town the other day, and the bike even has a speaker built in, so I can hear it. I don't have to like plug this in to even play it back. It's all right here. Now let's go into settings. Let's go up to the very top, display. We have screen brightness, so we can turn that up or down. There is an automatic setting. Theme style, you can do light or dark. So I currently have it set to automatic, so it's gonna look like this when it's nice and bright out. Everything's gonna be white, real easy to read, and then if it gets to be darker at nighttime, it's gonna automatically change to the dark theme. Temperature display, that is referring to these, motor temperature, battery temperature. You can see they just say normal right now. So if I change that to numerical values, now you can see motor temperature is currently sitting at 79 degrees Fahrenheit. Battery is at 81 Fahrenheit. Now unit display, you can have in kilometers or miles, Celsius or Fahrenheit. You can have the tire pressure in bar or PSI. They have a few different languages here. Widgets, this kind of changes the look of the home screen. So here's one option. You can have the tire pressures on the main screen with your battery percentage and range. You've also got your speed right in the center. You can also click between those different driving modes. Now if you change it to this one, then you have a little more information. You get instantaneous power, which I like to see. You get average energy consumption. You get the motor temperature, battery temperature. So it just depends on what you prefer to monitor under your normal riding. Some time settings there. Now this is all just under display. Now we can go to sound and lighting. Welcome mode. So basically that's like lights and different things that can turn on. So there is a headlight delay. So if the vehicle is locked, you can have the lights stay on for up to 60 seconds. There's a bunch of different options. Automatic headlights, if it gets dark, I don't have to worry about pushing the button over here. Light show, I will have to turn off all of the lights and show you what that does. Well, I guess we might as well do that now. Watch this. Now, is there any point to doing a light show like that? No, really not. It's just fun, entertainment. I mean, it does kind of show off how many lights are actually on this bike, which is pretty cool. Now, that sound that you were hearing and the lights is all part of the system that's pre-programmed in. So it's not something you can change right now, but you'll see that says light show off, it says mode 1. Basically, they can do over-the-air wireless updates to these bikes. So as they add more music and more sound effects, there's going to be an update. You can download more of those. Brightness of the light. That's going to adjust these guys right here. It doesn't look like much in the daytime, but at night, these actually are really bright. So I can definitely see wanting to turn these down. One of the things you'll see is that when you're using the throttle, these are going to basically rise up at kind of like a power meter. Now, this bike is capable of having a radar system. My understanding is that due to some restrictions in the US and tail light sizing, they're not going to be installed from the factory. It is still going to be an option, something you can buy on their website. So I'm hoping to get my hands on one of those, plug it into the back of this thing, because it has blind spot detection. And what that's supposed to do is flash these lights if there's a vehicle in your blind spot on one side or the other. So there's a bunch of little hidden features that these lights will do. System sound, you've heard some various beeps and noises. You can have that as standard, or you can turn all that off. Low speed pedestrian alert. I should turn that on. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna put the kickstand up. We're gonna put it into drive mode. We're gonna turn it down to sail. And I'm just gonna go forward through the shop here for a second so you can hear the low speed pedestrian noise. It's pretty quiet. It's kind of like a low hum almost. The Teslas have like this low pitched whine that kind of increases and decreases as the speed of the vehicle changes. This is just kind of like a static sound that changes. Now, something else this bike has, you may notice, is reverse, which is quite easy to use. You can hear that pedestrian mode again. You can see my reverse camera is on as I back up. That goes on automatically. I don't have to touch anything for that. As soon as I push that reverse button, there's my rear camera. All right, going back to the settings, low speed pedestrian alert. So that operates from 0 to 20 kilometers an hour. That is also something where they may have other options of what that sound is gonna be like in the future. That's what it's like right now, but as they do over-the-air updates, maybe they can make it sound like a little engine or some other futuristic noise. Security notice, I have set off the alarm on this thing. It is quite loud. In the original programming of this bike, the security system was like, the lights would come on, but it was kind of this soft little beeping noise. You could barely hear it. Thankfully, this entire bike is a CAN bus system, meaning everything electrical is connected to everything. So you don't have to rewire things on the bike if they want to change how the horn works, how the lights work. It's just software at that point. They've actually spent more years working on this bike on the software side of things than they have the hardware. So the original bike, this specific bike, when I first had it, the alarm was very quiet. They did a software update, and now when the alarm goes off, it honks the horn, it's obnoxiously loud, and it's actually a proper, secure alarm. It works great. So those are the sound and lighting options. Now my favorite section, we're gonna get to vehicle control. We have seat lock. So this seat is actually locked down. There's no storage or anything underneath there, but there is like a shut off switch and things like that. There's a breaker under there. Steering lock, this is kind of part of the security of this bike. When I turn this bike off, the handlebars will be locked typically to one side, and this lock is automatic. Multifunction buttons. That's this guy right here. So you can either have this set as what they call page mode or riding mode. So let me sit back on the bike. Or in drive mode. I'm going to show you how this works. So in page mode, if I press what they call the multifunction button, I'm going to swap between my navigation screen, my analytics data screen. I guess there's two of those. I can't remember exactly the difference between what I call those. I can see my camera screen. I can go to settings, all just by pushing this button over here on the right. Now in riding mode setting, what that's going to do when you push this button is just going to change the sail, dynamic, and zigzag. Once again, that's kind of like eco, standard, or sport. When I do the follow-up video or one of the follow-up videos for this bike, I am of course going to put the bike on the dyno. I just repainted it, physically moved it up here to the shop to make it easier to dyno bikes, and I'm just getting everything hooked back up. So that's why I'm not quite ready to do it today, but I promise this thing's absolutely going on the dyno in every single setting. So that's what that button does. Let's go back to settings. ERS is the energy recovery system. Effectively, that's your regen braking. So in the off setting, this bike is going to coast really well. Even when you apply the brakes, the regen braking is very, very minimal. But if you turn that to on, which is what I personally prefer, then when you pull the brakes, you get a little bit of regen braking. That's going to help slow you down and feed more energy back into the bike. On is definitely my preference. I think the default was in fact off. I'm hoping that as they do software updates, they'll have something kind of in between where it's not just on or off. I would like maybe an even stronger setting if the bike is capable of doing a stronger regen. You know, maybe a few steps in the middle, so you can kind of fine tune that to your preference. But right now we just have on and off. There are two settings for power. The system defaults to temp guard. It explains this, but effectively you can have this in temp guard mode. So it's going to watch your temperatures very carefully on the controller, the motor, and prioritize those. Or you can put power priority mode. And then it's going to give you a little bit more power. It's going to not be quite as cautious on the temperatures, but it's still never going to let the temperatures go over their maximums. It's still going to operate safely. You should be able to operate in this power mode all the time. Temp guard just keeps things even cooler. I run it in power mode. Riding mode, we can change that as well right here, but we can do that from the main screen. Tire pressure display, we can turn that on or off. I like to have that on. The steering lock sensor, we can turn that on or off as well. And then I'm going to skip over Stone Age mode for just a moment. We'll come back to that. So on the far right here is the radar setting, which I unfortunately don't have. Hey NAXEON, I know you're going to watch this video. Really would love to test the radar maybe in the next video. Maybe we can get our hands on one of those, maybe. But back to this. You can see I have auto recorder. So right here's the little recording symbol on the bike. So as soon as I turn on the bike and I start going, I'm in drive, whatever, like it's just recording all the time. This bike, yes, has ABS. If you're not familiar with ABS, is that automatic braking system? Is that advanced braking system? I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but check this out. This is how you can quickly tell by looking at a brake rotor if it has ABS or not. What this means is that if you are braking too hard, instead of the tire braking traction, the brake is going to ease up a little bit and it's going to prevent you from losing control. Now this is standard on all vehicles these days, but it is definitely not standard on motorcycles. If you're a new rider or if you think you're going to ride in the rain a lot, I do think ABS is really smart. It's a nice safety feature that they've included that most bikes do not have. And because we're in the configuration screen, you can see that you can actually just turn it off. Now, because ABS is a safety feature, it does reactivate the next time you start the vehicle. I can ride this bike pretty hard, brake pretty hard, and I have rarely ever felt the ABS kick in. It seems like it is working as intended. Now, traction control, I do have set off. It's been dry lately. The weather has been great. I just haven't had a need to have the traction control on. And I did find it a little overly sensitive for my liking. Bear in mind, I'm usually riding in the zigzag mode, the highest power level all the time. I'm gunning it all the time. I'm not going easy on the bike. So I trigger the traction control often. On the main screen right up here, there'll be a little message that pops up that says TCS has been enabled, power reduced or something like that. And if you let off the throttle and then twist the throttle again, you'll basically clear the low power setting and the traction control being triggered. So if you're riding in dry conditions, at least for me, I like to just turn it off. If it was icy or raining, I probably would leave that on. Now, traction control is different from the ABS. This was actually one of my requests, so thank you, NAXEON, for doing this. I was hoping that you could turn traction control off and it would remember your preference and leave it that way, and thank you. They did one of those updates and now it works that way. It remembers my preference. That's one of the awesome things about over-the-air updates. If users have feedback on how they could improve the bike, they can just change it. So I think I've covered everything except for Stone Age. This did not exist until about a week ago. So most of the miles I've put on the bike did not have this setting. And if you've seen any other videos, although they're very, very, very few, on the NAXEON bike, they did not have this setting either. And there's a good reason they put this into the bike. Some of you, when I explain it, might think this is overriding safety features that you shouldn't be able to override, but sometimes things just don't work as intended, or you have an accident and little things break. It's a reality of electronics. So Stone Age mode, if you turn it on, disables the seat sensor, the side stand, the kickstand, disables the brake signal. Let's say you're out for a ride and suddenly you have no power. Now, if you squeeze one of these brakes, you'll see there is a brake symbol right at the top that pops up there. So you would know if one of your brakes is tripped. Now, if you're not pulling the brake and that is on, obviously that is an electrical problem that needs to be fixed. But let's say you just are out on a ride and you just want to get home. Well, instead of having to dig into the wiring and physically unplug the brake switch, now you can just go to the Stone Age mode, turn the brake switch off, and keep going on your ride. Same thing can happen with the kickstand. If this switch is not working properly, you can temporarily disable it. The seat also has a switch in it. It also has sensors in it so it knows when you're sitting on the bike or not, and that can be disabled as well. That was one of my requests personally. There was an early issue with the original seat on some of the bikes. Now, I experienced it right at first. The funny thing is, the more I rode the bike, the better the issue got, and then eventually the issue went away completely. Now, I told NAXEON about it, that basically the problem resolved itself, and I think the reason why was that the seat cushion broke in and then the seat sensor started working the way it was intended. So something about the saddle was just a little too stiff or something, the way they were produced. But they went ahead and completely changed the entire sensor system in the seat to ensure that that never happens again. And they have really been straightforward about addressing problems like that early on, because they saw a couple of early issues. Just to be nice, I don't think they needed to do this personally. They offered a free 1-year AAA membership for anyone who buys a NAXEON bike. So those are my preferences on all these settings. Traction control off, ABS I leave on. I like to see my tire pressure. If I go to network settings, I can connect to my wireless network here in the shop, and you'll see it does say 4G information. This thing does have a genuine 4G data card, SIM card slot. Unfortunately, on these early bikes, it only works with Verizon's network. So you do have to get a data card from Verizon for it to work. A little bit of a downside, but if you put the 4G card in there, then you can have all of the navigation features and all of the charging network features, everything, no matter where you go. You don't have to be connected to Wi-Fi. And that's why I wanted to leave some of the performance stuff for the next video. But of course, I do have to show you how this thing rides. How fast does it go? Now, I'm not fully charged, I'm at 81%, but that is plenty. So let's hook up the camera and get riding. This video is not sponsored by Insta360, but if Insta360 would like to sponsor a future video, please reach out. This might be a silly request, but if NAXEON hears this, I'm sure they were going for the Tesla look, but this is my well-worn but used Tesla card I keep in my wallet as a backup. This is my NAXEON card. Could you make it a slightly different color than Tesla's? I just keep mixing them up. Now I just realized that I was so involved in the technical side of things that I did not show you how cool this front suspension fork is. Definitely a polarizing feature of the bike, but something really cool. I'll talk about the suspension feel as I ride a little bit. Definitely have some mostly good things, but there's one little negative I've noticed about it that I'm hoping can be adjusted. I mean, the bike does have a polarizing look to it. They wanted it to be futuristic. I gotta adjust my mirrors here. They wanted people to see it and say, that's something different. And I will tell you what, that absolutely happens. I have never been stared at so many times on any other bike that I've ridden. Everybody wants to know what this thing is. It's often referred to as the Tron bike. It is very futuristic looking, and the technology really is futuristic. So suspension-wise, rear suspension, let's talk about that first. Zero complaints about the rear suspension. That's it. You may have noticed that this is a hub motor. See, that guy was just staring. I think for an on-road bike, a hub motor is perfectly fine. I don't think it's a problem at all. What it does is give you more space in the frame for a bigger battery, which is what they've done. It's a 6.5 kilowatt hour battery, which is bigger than most bikes in this price range. $7,999 right at $8,000. So you're gonna get more range. So the suspension is set up to be quite soft. It is very comfortable. Now the saddle, I think, is a big part of that. It's very comfortable. The sides of the bike are very smooth. You can grip onto them with your legs, kind of hug them for the turns. But when you hit bumps on this thing, it just soaks them all up. You just can stay seated and it's not a big deal at all. It's just a really smooth ride at all speeds. I don't have any issues hitting bumps when I'm going straight, but if I'm riding this bike hard, leaned into a turn, and I hit a bump, it feels like the front end can get a little, what I would call, unsettled, and you get a tiny bit of a wobble, but you get a little shimmy there after a bump. And I do think that maybe if I stiffened up the front shock, maybe that would help reduce that. I'm not 100% sure yet. I'm gonna have to try that. Last I heard, they had over 150 dealers already set up. And by the way, we'll be one of them. Now I know right now we're not a motorcycle dealer, at least at the time of filming this video. And I didn't really have plans on being a motorcycle dealer. And NAXEON didn't reach out to me to be a motorcycle dealer. But seeing the bike did push me over the edge to start doing the paperwork. So we're setting up for it. Basically, they reached out to me due to a video. I traveled to LA, I saw the bike, and I liked it so much that I was like, yeah, we could be a dealer for these. Like, this fits in so well with electric bikes. It's quiet. That hub motor is basically silent. You don't hear it at all. Some bikes you get it like a little whining noise, especially mid-drives. This thing is just absolutely silent. So braking wise, I will point out this is using a standard motorcycle configuration. It is a right brake for the front
which is going to be your primary brake on a motorcycle, and then rear brake is the left. And then of course I do have that ERS turned on, so with either brake I'm getting a little bit of energy recaptured, which is always going to be slowing the rear wheel. So you can kind of bias towards the front and get a little bit of both. So we're doing 50 miles an hour right now. I am just barely on the throttle. We are drawing right around 3,000 watts. But when you're already going 50, the acceleration is kind of like, it's not anything super amazing. It's really great off the line from 0. But if you're already doing 40, 50 miles an hour, it's kind of a slow ramp up at higher speeds. Now the bike absolutely can get up to highway speeds. 55, no problem, all day long, uphill, downhill, doesn't matter. 65, I'm gonna say, might depend on your weight and how steep the hill is. I have not taken this thing up some of the bigger highways, up the steeper hills, because I'm a little hesitant about what speed it could maintain long term. I'd like to do 65 all the time, and I know it can do that on flat ground without any issue, but that's going to have to be a performance test I'm going to have to do. I feel like the battery size of 6.5 kilowatt hours combined with the more tame, I shall say, 11,000 watts makes for a really nice riding experience when it comes to range. I can ride this thing around for what feels like hours and just not worry about the battery dying. So nice, so smooth, so comfortable. You could commute on this thing every day, all the time. And you can see the suspension just soaking up all these little micro cracks and bumps in the road. And it's kind of a cool feeling to see it doing the work, but not feel it. Just a very upright, kind of a standard, or what used to be called a standard motorcycle. I've only mentioned to you so far the 3 buttons, or the 3 riding modes of sail, dynamic, and zigzag. But there is one more. Now, I didn't mention it yet because you can't use it all the time, which is a little bit of a bummer. But there is this trigger right here. So if I push this, I just activated, I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically a turbo mode. So you can think of that kind of like a passing mode is what they like to call it. It's kind of like if you were riding a standard bike and you downshifted to get a little more acceleration. You can click that button, and for a little bit it'll give you, 2,000-3,000 more watts of power, and then it goes away. So the acceleration between 65 and 70 is slow, but it does get there. Like I said, I've had this thing up to 70 miles an hour on flat ground, and I don't remember the top speed I've had it up to downhill, but it's definitely been over 80. We'll put it that way. And it handled great. I had no concerns about it. Now, I didn't mention this button over here on the left, opposite of the turbo button, we'll call it. That one is just like a little headlight flasher. So if you need to flash your lights at somebody, that's what that's for. It's got a horn, of course. That's the horn that sets off the alarm and why I didn't want to do it inside earlier. It's got hazards, high beam, low beam. Oh, it has a cruise control and really easy to use. It's literally a button over here on the right. You just push it. That's one of my favorite features. If you happen to have a gravel road like I do and you're wondering how it handles, it does just fine. The traction control's off. hitting speed bumps, potholes, whatever you want to call them. It soaks them all up really well. It might sound a little bit silly and is definitely not what NAXEON intended, but the range is so good, the battery's so good, the power is nice. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed. You can see what this front tire looks like. Great for the street, nice deep groove, so hopefully that sheds water. But I mean, with how smooth it is, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to putting a slightly knobbier tire on this thing and making a little more of a scrambler thing out of it. I don't know if they ever considered that, but it might be kind of fun. So now that I've made it home, I push this button right here. You can see I'm at 73%. So now, instead of having to carry the charger around with me, I can grab my good old-fashioned level 2 charger that I already have at home, plug the bike in. There we go, it's showing that it's plugged in and charging. And you can see right here, instantaneous power is a negative 1.5 kilowatts. So that is the charging speed right now. And just for curiosity, let's open the app. Yeah, you can see that it is showing that it's charging, and it's gonna take an hour and a half to get all the way up to 100%. Might seem like a long time, but it's probably gonna go pretty quickly for the first little bit and then slow down a little from there. I can't remember what the onboard charger limit is. I wanna say it might be 1.8 kilowatts maximum. If there's one thing I wish was a little bit quicker, it would be the onboard charging speed. Now, compared to like an e-bike or something, I mean, this is ridiculously fast. An electric bike charger is usually about 100 watts. Some are like 150 watts. This is 10 times that much power. So this really is pretty quick. And I will probably be back in the morning for some more riding. It's morning, let's ride. You can hear the pedestrian noise-making sound. Hopefully they'll add some more options. My opinion of it right now is that it kind of sounds like some sort of relaxing yoga music. I don't know, you tell me what you guys think. You want me to keep going for about 10 minutes? Let me show you where the battery capacity's at. Still says my range left is 92 miles. I'm at 83%. And the rest of my commute is downhill, so I am barely gonna use any more. I'm probably gonna be well above 70% even by the time I've done my full round trip commute. Now, that's only about 20 miles or so for me, but that means that I don't have to worry about charging this thing every single day. If I forget, it really doesn't matter. I could probably go, I mean, if I really get over 100 miles of range, it might be possible for me to do an entire week. It'd be getting really low, probably wouldn't want to push it that much, but it's possible. Here's the rear suspension shock. You can see there's an adjustment down there at the bottom, so we could tighten that up. The front shock, I do feel like might be a little bit soft. It is set basically at the lowest setting. It's totally loose, so thankfully there's some room to tighten it up. One thing that is a downside is that it's not exactly easy to adjust. Let me show you why. That's the adjustment down there. You need like a wrench that you can get in there and turn that thing. And unfortunately, due to the design of the fork, you can't really get in there. I think the easiest way to do that, and I'm gonna do that in the next video when I really push the performance of this thing, is probably gonna be to remove these 4 bolts, pull this headlight out, and then I can get in there, adjust the shock a bit, and then put that back on. So I do wish you could get in there and adjust that more easily, but that's the only way I can see to actually get that done. Now, is there anything I wish this bike had that it doesn't have? That's a tough one, because most of the things I've asked for on other bikes, it already has. The onboard charging, not having to carry a cable around, larger battery, 6.5 kilowatt hours, all of that is tucked in here.
I would say onboard storage would be awesome. There's no room for it. Everything in here is battery, controller, everything to make the bike work. Your motor's in the rear wheel. There's no room under the seat. They do already have saddlebags. They mount onto this piece back here. So they have bags specifically designed for the bike already, and I'm probably going to get some of those for myself as well. I am going to point out, because somebody's probably going to ask, hey, doesn't this thing come with a front wheel cover as well? And yes, it does. You can see I'm running the one in the back, but not in the front. So if you get one of these bikes, it is actually going to come with the front wheel covers, not installed. And the reason for that is because if you're going to ride at higher speeds, this front wheel being totally enclosed and turning does kind of act a little bit like a rudder up there and can cause some instability at high speeds. So if you're going to do a lot of highway riding, they actually recommend leaving it off. If you're going to ride around town in the city all the time, it's not a big deal. You could put it on. So because I do tend to ride, 55, 60 miles an hour quite often, I opted to leave it off, and pleasantly surprised by the very nice looking wheels. So thankfully, the wheels look great underneath those covers, even if you don't want them on there. Obviously, the fork is a standout feature. I do like how plush it is, how soft it is, how comfortable it is. I just think it needs to be a little firmer for handling, but I think we can fix that with some suspension tuning. But realistically, for the price of $8,000, I can't think of anything else that I really would want on this bike. It has cruise control, it's got a bunch of different riding modes. There might be some things on this screen over time that I feel like need to be changed or adjusted, but so far everything I've asked for, they've done software updates and added. So I think it's going to be really minimal, and any major issues they're going to correct right away. There were a few issues right when the bike first came out. They fixed every single one of those bikes with both hardware and software solutions. They did a whole video about all of the changes they made to the first round of production bikes. You can go check that out on their channel if you want to go into all the details. I don't feel like I need to go into it because it's all fixed. Hey look, somebody on an e-bike. I don't know, maybe I'll think of something as I ride, so let's go ride some more. And something I didn't mention about this screen, I'm going to change it back to the main screen right here, is that the touch screen is disabled once you're moving. Hey, I was actually able to move it with my glove. Usually my gloves don't work. So as soon as you start rolling, you don't have to worry about accidentally touching that and doing something weird. But that was one of my first questions is, can you use the touchscreen while riding? And the answer is no, which I think is the right thing to do. You shouldn't be messing around swiping on your screen. You should have both hands on the handlebars. I feel like I've crammed a lot into this video, and there's probably a lot of stuff that I've missed already. But like I said, I'm gonna do another video. I am gonna do a formal range test on this. I'm gonna push this thing as hard as I possibly can and see how fast can I kill the battery. What is the minimum range that I can get? And what is the performance like on the lower end of the battery? Does it start to suffer really bad? I don't even know yet, because the lowest I've had it is like 40% and it was still running great. And then of course a long range test, if I put this thing in sail mode, kind of like the eco mode, and cruise around at 35, 40 mile an hour, how far will it go? When I jumped on this morning, it said 112 miles, was the expected range. This is the NAXEON IAM. I personally think it's a great bike. It's a ton of fun. The range is excellent. I've been very pleased with my experience with it so far. I highly recommend you stop by Area 13 and check this thing out in person. If you've got a motorcycle license, by all means, please come ride it. But I'm gonna be back for another video. I'm gonna do a dyno test on this thing as well, verify exactly how much horsepower this thing has, exactly how much torque. Okay, one more thing I'm gonna mention. I think this motorcycle would be excellent as a first motorcycle, excellent for beginners. There's other electric motorcycles I think that could be pretty decent for a first-time buyer as well. The power level, the range, the ease of use, the size, the comfort. So if you're wondering, would this make a good first motorcycle if you're coming, say, from an e-bike? The answer is 100% yes.